Peter King, live at 5. Can't ask for more than that after another win for the 49ers, after a historically significant people watching the NFL Thanksgiving Day. Sunday was fascinating as well. Peter, thank you for joining us. Always good to talk to you. We hope it was wonderful with friends and family over Thanksgiving.
Very good. Yeah, hope it was great for you guys, too. I had a good time.
Excellent. Thank you so much. We did as well. Well, I don't want to speak for Ray. I don't know if that's possible, but I did. Styles make fights, and I'm not asking you to judge one against the other through any lens other than what you find more impressive. What did you think was the more impressive game out of the 49ers? The razzle-dazzle we saw in Mexico City, or the defensive brass knuckles they just took out yesterday?
Well, I still think the Saints are a little better than most people think. And I think to shut out a team with, and look, people will laugh when I say this, I think Andy Dalton is a decent NFL quarterback. He had some very good weapons he was playing with on Sunday. And quite honestly, I just think that the game against New Orleans was more impressive, even though they didn't roll up the score like they did against Arizona. Guys, I don't know what to make of Arizona. I am down on almost everything Arizona right now. I wrote about it in my column today. I mean, 1 year ago next week, they were 10-2 and they were the 1 seed in the NFC. And since then, they're 5-12, and they're bordering on being a laughing stock after giving Kyler Murray, Cliff Kingsbury, and Steve Keim $300 million. So it's all, you got to forgive me. The Cardinals have some good weapons and they can be dangerous at times, but I still think that the Saints probably are a little bit more dangerous of a team. And here's the weird thing about this. There's only been 4 shutouts in the NFL this year, and I think 174 games. And, to shut out that team and for the 4th consecutive week not allow a point in the second half, I think is really a pretty great accomplishment for any team in the NFL today to be able to do that, because the 49ers are playing defense in the last month the way the Pittsburgh Steelers played defense in their glory years.
Peter, in your Monday morning column, you gave DeMeco Ryans your Coach of the Week award, and I don't think there's any doubt he's got NFL head coach written all over him. The only question will be, next year or another year. It feels like he's going to get that opportunity. He's been spectacular. The adjustments he makes are spectacular. And I don't know if that is, the privilege that you get when you have a defensive line that can just get to the quarterback, and so you can pick and choose when to blitz, but he continues to pick and choose when to blitz at the perfect times.
So last night after the game, I spent, 10 or 15 minutes on the phone with Fred Warner. And one of the things that we talked about was just the fact that he knows that, that DeMeco Ryans is probably going to get a shot. Who knows? But he told me 2 interesting things last night, okay? He said, number one, because DeMeco played before, he has the sense of a player. He knows about the flow. He kept talking about the flow of the game, okay? And he just said he knows exactly what to call in every single moment. And he said that, look, we started with this culture and this way of playing defense with Robert Saleh. And he said what DeMeco Ryans has done is to raise the standard and to do more things in this defense. And one of the other things he said that was really interesting, I thought, is that, one of the things that the 49ers have done and done a really good job of doing is to integrate new players into the scheme sort of, without blinking. And the guy he brought up was Talanoa Hufanga. And I keep watching this guy, and I say, here's a 5th round pick in the draft, a 3rd day pick. And look, if there is justice, he's going to make the Pro Bowl this year. And I just keep watching the 49ers move young players into prominent roles on this defense, and really kind of all over the roster. You see what Drake Jackson has done in his trials this year. And look, you see that they do a really good job in making new players play well right away. The last thing I would say just about DeMeco Ryans. He said that Fred Warner said to me that one of the things that the players really respond to is DeMeco Ryans' leadership ability and the fact that he seems still like a player. And he told me that he's watched film. He's watched highlights of DeMeco Ryans. And one of the things that really impressed him as a player was his instincts. And, the fact that on the field, it appeared that he was never really surprised. So I think that sort of leadership role, I would guess that most of the guys on that defense think that in the tenor of the times that the NFL is in right now, where there is going to be a tremendous amount of pressure to ratchet up on all teams who have vacancies, the ability to look very seriously at candidates of all color, that I think DeMeco Ryans, he would get a job if he were green, but I also think that DeMeco Ryans, and how great he has performed at his task this year, I think he has got a great chance to be a head coach in 2023.
The biggest knock on him, though, is that he's on the side of the football that most owners don't tend to pay attention to. Is that going to be the reason why he doesn't get a job if that's what happens?
Hey, Ray, one of the things I was thinking of when I've got a little list that I just keep. It's on the side of my desk here where, I've got like 30 names on this list. And, it's all these guys who've got a chance to be head coaches very soon, and only 7 of them are on the defensive side of the ball. But as of now, as of today, DeMeco Ryans easily is in the top 5. Okay. But there was only one defensive coach named in the last cycle last year. And so you look at that and you say, well, maybe NFL teams should look at coaches differently than they have in the past. But I think, Ray, one of the things that if you're a general manager, if you're an owner right now and you're looking for a coach, Matt Eberflus was the one defensive general manager, or the one defensive coach hired last year. And so theoretically, I think you would say, well, maybe they'll catch up this year, and maybe finally they will look at defensive coaches as aggressively as they look at offensive coaches. Here's the problem, right? Like Matt Eberflus, even though they've traded so many of his guys, Matt Eberflus right now has a bottom half of the NFL defense. And when you think about that, I think going into this weekend, they were like 27th in the NFL in scoring defense. And then they gave up 31 points to the Jets. So, they're going to have to love DeMeco Ryans for who he is, not necessarily for, not necessarily. They're going to have to interview DeMeco Ryans and like him for who he is, but also, DeMeco Ryans is going to have a very solid plan for the offensive side of the ball a month from now when those interview requests start, or a little bit more than a month, when those interview requests start coming in.
Peter King here on 95.7 The Game, and I'm going to agree with you in terms of the Saints are better than I thought that they would be. Their defensive line certainly spent as long of an afternoon frustrating the 49ers in a running game as I've seen the 49ers running game frustrated in a while, and all credit in the world to Jimmy for doing enough to put up enough offensively through a passing game that really had to carry the day. We've learned that Elijah Mitchell's sprained MCL is going to have him back on the IR now. And what was the deepest, it felt like it was billed at times as one of the deeper backfields in all of football that only got deeper when they added Christian McCaffrey, is just 2-3 weeks later now maybe as shallow as Christian McCaffrey, and that's about it. And good luck with Jordan Mason and a Ty Davis-Price, a rookie that's not even dressing. What level of regret do you think this team might have of giving Jeff Wilson away for future picks?
I'm sure they would not have done it had they known that Elijah Mitchell again was going to miss some time. I think what happens a lot of times is that, and again, I don't have the list of 49er draft picks in front of me, but I think a lot of times what a team does, and I'd be surprised that John Lynch and Adam Peters didn't, and Kyle Shanahan didn't philosophically work this way, that if they were missing, let's say, a 5th or 6th round pick and had a chance to recoup it for, let's say, the 3rd running back on the roster, they're going to take that. And again, it reminds me this year in the NFL, what you're seeing over and over and over again, there have been an absolute epidemic of injuries at the wide receiver position, almost for every team in the league. Who has been unscathed by receiver injuries? I don't know any team. But again, if you're touching the ball and you're a physical player and a physical runner, you've got a chance to get hurt, and that's what happened. And I mean, look, the real disaster will be obviously if McCaffrey has to miss any time, and that's why if I'm Kyle Shanahan, I'm thinking in very conservative terms with how I use him, because look, Christian McCaffrey is going to be gigantic in however far the 49ers go. So whenever they have a chance to rest him, even if it means, as you say, they're going to have to play Davis-Price some, whether they feel he's ready or good enough or whatever. I mean, shoot, didn't they pick him in the 3rd round?
Yeah.
I mean, if you pick a guy in the 3rd round, you've got to think at some level that he's going to be able to help you, and that time might be coming fairly soon.
When you look at San Francisco's defense, if you're forced to compare it to the one in 2019, which one is better and why?
Well, I guess what I would say right now is that I think healthy, the secondary in 2019 was a little bit better at the corner position, okay? But that doesn't necessarily mean that at least as of right now, that this group can't be significantly better over time. But I think if Bosa is there and Bosa is healthy, obviously that helps your secondary, like by a lot. And so to me, I don't really think there is a major difference other than, look, I guess I would say I've really become smitten with Hufanga, and, watching him play and seeing how smart he is and how good he is at every level of the field. He's obviously excellent in run support. He's clearly a guy who is mature beyond his years. And look, that isn't to say that Jaquiski Tartt was a bad player at all. I think he was playing strong 3 years ago. But I think that having Richard Sherman in a solid role in 2019 and having, I think, a real good nickel, K'Wan Williams, in 2019, that's probably where this group has the edge. The 2019 group has the edge over this year's team. Plus, but I mean, so many of the players are the same. I mean, because if you think about it, and I'm going really off memory here, so DeForest Buckner obviously is gone. DJ Jones is gone. D Ford's gone. But you really have, and Solomon Thomas, who was not a hugely prominent player then, but he was a contributor.
He stunk.
Obviously, though, Bosa, was a rookie that year. Fred Warner was really just coming into his own. Dre Greenlaw, he was either a rookie or a second-year guy in 19. They had a bunch of new puzzle pieces that were just finally starting to fit together, along obviously with DeForest Buckner and Eric Armstead. So I think it's an interesting question to ask. And whereas I do think the corners were probably a little bit better back then, I think that, Hufanga really helps the secondary be a little bit more punishing and a little bit more physical than it was back then.
Peter King with us on 95.7 The Game. And I'll tell you what, Peter, I mean, you can talk to anyone you want to in football. You get a lot of return calls quickly, I would imagine. Make sure you go out of your way to meet Talanoa Hufanga. You can tell he was raised by incredible parents. He's just a gentleman, as humble as a hat in a hand. I mean, he's everything you'd want in a young player for sure. And just, this defense is going to get even better, you would presume, because they're going to be getting Eric Armstead back, hopefully as early as next week, and they might need him because this Miami Dolphins team is very, very interesting. We know how electric they are offensively, and the biggest three-game stretch of the year is coming up here for the 49ers, Peter. They got the Dolphins next Sunday, followed by Brady, and then they play the Seahawks, which I don't care if the Raiders beat them last night. 49ers, Seahawks, throw out the record book. That's just nasty football, no matter who's involved. Huge stretch coming up for this team. Obviously, 7-4. It doesn't sound great. That's the fourth best record right now in the NFC. Only Philadelphia, Dallas, and Minnesota have better records. Would you make an argument that Philadelphia, Dallas, Minnesota were demonstrably that much better than a 7-4 49er team that you just saw?
Listen, this is why you can't just do overall records, because the 49ers of September are simply not the 49ers of Thanksgiving,
Yeah.
And really, one of the things that I think is very interesting, and I asked Warner about it last night, and I'd love to do a deep dive with exactly what happened in the several days after the game against Kansas City, where they gave up 30 points in the second half. You know, and you can say what you want. It was the big plays and all that other stuff, but that had to be an absolutely cold slap in the face to a team that thought it had a real good defense. So, I mean, clearly they've woken up from that moment and, you know, won 4 in a row and look so much better than they did then. But I want to go back to something that you said about the schedule, and you're absolutely right. You know, Miami will be, other than Kansas City, I think as tough a test as they have all season. But I wouldn't stop at just Tampa and then, you know, up in Decibelville, up in Seattle, because Washington right now is one of the most interesting teams in football. They're 6-1 in their last 7 games. I think they're going to beat the Giants this week, and then they have a bye, and then they play the Giants again before they play in San Francisco. Now, I'm not saying you can write them down for 8-1, but they're either going to be 8-1 or 7-2, you know, in their previous 2 months walking into Santa Clara, you know, in whatever it is, 3 weeks, 4 weeks from now. So that's going to be a tougher game than maybe people might think. And then, you know, look, it's almost like the Raiders in the last 2 weeks have gotten a wake-up call on the road. You know, they've won 2 games. They won that game yesterday so impressively in Seattle. And, you know, as strange as it sounds, Josh Jacobs had one of the best games a running back has ever had in the history of the NFL. And I know you say, okay, settle down, Gramps. I mean, you know, 303 yards with a strained calf and an 86-yard TD run to end the game, a walk-off 86-yarder. They're a very, very interesting team right now. And so the only reason I point that out is their next 5 games, it's not just their next 3. It's their next 5. If somehow, some way, they get to the finish line, Arizona, week 18 at home, you know, I think and they're either tied or ahead in the division. I think they're going to win the division, but this is not going to be easy. And look, I'm not saying that, you know, Seattle has at least as tough a schedule, because remember, they've got to go to Kansas City. And if you think Washington is a good team and sort of a surprise team, Seattle's got to play the Jets. And we'd all have laughed at that, you know, on Labor Day weekend. And you'd say, oh, my God, Seattle's going to be so lucky to get the Jets late. The Jets are going to be playing for a playoff spot that weekend. So I think it's going to be a really, really interesting pennant race. And I would be surprised if Seattle, in the last two games, Tampa Bay and Vegas, if that is their death knell. I think they're still going to be okay. Okay,
Gramps. You seem to have implied that the Giants are starting to fade, which sounds like much of your argument for the Commanders. But when you look at the entire conference, just take the top 9 teams. Let's throw Atlanta in there just out of kindness.
Yep.
Who fits where? Is there somebody who, I mean, is Philadelphia head and shoulders above everybody else, and then everybody's about the same? Or is this already starting to get more stratified?
In my opinion, right now, it's Philadelphia, gap, San Francisco, Minnesota, Dallas, gap, and then the rest, you know, whatever order you want to put in. I'd probably right now today put them Seattle or Tampa Bay, Seattle, Washington, Giants. That's probably what I do. And even though they're not going to make the playoffs, I think right now today, I think Detroit is better than the Giants. The only problem is Detroit's 4-7 and the Giants are 7-4. But the most amazing thing about the Giants, and look, I don't mean to dog the Giants. I think the performance of the Giants this year has been one of the gigantic surprises of this season. They don't have the talent to be 7-4. They have had a great coaching staff, a great personnel staff slide in. But the facts are facts, because Washington has gotten so hot. If Washington beats the Giants Sunday, we will exit Week 13 with the New York Giants being alone in last place in the NFC East. After, much of the last 5 or 6 weeks, they were the darling of the league. And now look at their schedule. They got a tough run the rest of the way. I kind of think it's going to be difficult for them to make the playoffs. And can I tell you one other quick little inside football story, or inside baseball, whatever the bad cliche is? It's that, and it's an oddity, okay, that the NFL tonight, because Roger Goodell has to make the decision tonight, and they have to announce it tomorrow morning. And I'm sure that there's a lot of conversations going back and forth. But the Tampa Bay San Francisco game, 2 weeks from now, is one of those games that has been protected by Fox. Okay? What that means is that it is in the Sunday late afternoon window, not late afternoon on the West Coast, but late afternoon window, the second window, and Fox, the networks, Fox and CBS, are allowed to protect a certain number of games during the year.
Can't get flexed.
So they don't lose them and they don't get flexed. And so that's probably the game, honestly, that the NFL really would like to flex on that weekend. Might be Tom Brady's last game ever in the Bay Area, and the Bucs will desperately need the game, and the 49ers obviously would need it too. But now you look at the rest of the games on the schedule: Philadelphia and the Giants, Buffalo and the Jets, God, I'm forgetting one. But the reason why they're looking at that is that the Sunday night game in 13 days is Kansas City and Denver. And while so many people would categorically say we are not flexing out of Patrick Mahomes, here's a question for you. Are you flexing out of Patrick Mahomes versus the worst offense that most of us have seen in years? I mean, Denver is absolutely futile, and this game could be 21-0 early in the second quarter, and then nobody's watching it. So you figure that Mahomes will give you a good number, but he may not give you a good number if the game's not competitive. So the NFL has a really interesting and I think pretty difficult decision to make about those games that weekend. And the last one is Miami at the Chargers, which I think if I were Roger Goodell, that's the game I would choose, because it's two teams battling for the playoffs. And it is two teams with huge young quarterbacks drafted back-to-back 5 and 6 a couple of years ago, and Tua and Justin Herbert. So that's probably what I would take. I have no idea what they're going to do, but I think there's a good chance. It's not certain, but I think there's a good chance they're going to flex that Sunday night game.
Certainly been a ratings bonanza for the NFL, the most watched regular season game in league history, the most watched Thanksgiving Day across the board in football history. So even if they make the wrong choice, something tells me this league is going to come out ahead when it's all said and done. Peter, let's wrap up with this, only because you just brought up Denver. Which Wilson has the brighter future, Zach Wilson or Russell Wilson?
What a question. Can I say neither? I mean,
what an answer. Look, what a legitimate answer if that is your answer.
It's crazy. But I think I would make 2 points about Russell Wilson. Number one, he understands that his back is absolutely, totally, solidly against the wall. Teammates turning on him. He just cannot find a solution. He's very probably going to have a new coach next year. he understands that, okay, I mean, he's got his paycheck coming, and he's going to make $1 jillion, but he's got pride just like anybody else. And I think it's obviously he'll enter the off season with a tremendous amount of questions around him. And this is just a guess. Okay. If I'm Sean Payton, all of a sudden where, if Russell Wilson was classic Russell Wilson and that job opened up, I'd be interested in that job. But would you really be interested in it now if you were Sean Payton? I bet not. And as far as Zach Wilson goes, look, I realize that this is going to sound almost foolish, but it's what I believe. About a month ago, I was talking to Geno Smith, and he said, you know what the NFL really fails at? Giving quarterbacks a real chance. Because look at, after 1 year of Peyton Manning, Steve Young, Troy Aikman, I want you to look at their stats after 1 year and look at the whispers that were going on. God, is this guy really going to be a guy? Is he going to be good? And so I think everybody is saying the same thing about Zach Wilson now. And I'm not putting him in their category at all. But Geno Smith had 1.5 to 2 years, and then he sat for 7 years. And so I think you got to be really careful in making value judgments on young quarterbacks, especially after you've picked them very high. I do exactly what the Jets are doing right now. You play Mike White and you give him a legitimate chance, and he's got to play his way out of the job. I get it. But I am not throwing out Zach Wilson with the trash.
I think one of the big differences, though, between the list of Hall of Famers and where Zach Wilson sits is at no point in time did early struggles did it feel like they tangibly lost the faith of their locker room, where it really feels like Wilson has.
Excellent point. But just remember, Steve Young was in Tampa, and Steve Young was not good in Tampa. So I would have to go back to that era. And after that 1 year that he played, I remember he played a game in Green Bay, and he got tackled really hard in a snowstorm, and he couldn't even breathe because his face mask was full of snow. But that was a debacle of a franchise, to put it mildly, and he was lucky to get out of there. But you wonder, with a losing team, a losing franchise, how many quarterbacks have been ruined by that? Probably ruined Archie Manning. Not that the Jets are losing anymore, but I just say with a guy like Zach Wilson, even if he doesn't play the rest of this year, he still has a chance to reclaim his career.
Peter, you give us more time than any guest we have each and every week. We thank you for it very, very much. Always a pleasure. You take care.
Hey, really appreciate it, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Gramps.
Yeah, by the way, you can't say see ya, Gramps, as your voice isn't working.
I know.
You old
doing
man.
Doing the best I can.
How many lozenges are we into this show?
8.
Yeah, really?
Yeah, I'm dying here.
Well, you're doing a great job for a dying man. I want to applaud you. Just
you stop it.
Tiny little bit of applause for you, Ray Ratto.